Hello, this is Rich. Today I got some exciting news. I guess it's kind of exciting. Exciting for me anyways. And useful to you guys. You guys obviously know that I'm working on a game that's kind of like the game for Sega Dreamcast called Seaman. And there's been a lot of overhauls to that. There's a whole new storyline to it. It's no longer a fish, and all that jazz. But scripting the conversations was a little bit hectic and easy to make mistakes because of the fact that you had to actually open up the XML file and type in things in a right fashion, right formatting, right uppercase, lowercase, all that stuff. And you also had to keep track of a lot of numbers that you're writing down and make sure they're matching up with the responses and the numbers are the same, and you can make a lot of errors that way. And let's face it, not everybody is suited for that kind of stuff. So for development purposes for me, which I'm also going to be releasing along with this video tutorial, is a tool that's still in beta. It's still in development, heavy development. There's a lot that needs to be done with this tool, but it does work currently. If you guys want to check it out, you guys can. I'm going to upload it to MediaFire for you guys to download and check it out. But this tool I made is it's all coded by me to help me with development purposes and to help other people with mods for my upcoming game here. So without further ado, I'd like to show you. You guys should also all be familiar with my dynamic conversation scripting that I showed you guys, my system that I use to do that. Well, you're going to see a different tool, and it's actually for a GUI. It's a GUI tool that basically you type in some information and it creates all these conversations automatically for you. That way you don't make any mistakes and you don't have to keep track of the file, and honestly you don't even have to look at the XML file at all. It's a nice user interface that you can actually use and script your conversations through there. Yeah, I call it the Dynamic Conversations Scripting Editor. And so let's just go ahead, let's get into it. Let me delete my recycle bin. As you can see on the desktop, I have no XML files. There's a reason for that, I'll show you. But here's my app, Dynamic Conversation Scripting app. And like I said, it needs a lot of work because there's a lot of features that are going to be amazing, again, to aid me in development and for modding. So you don't have to touch a single bit of XML code. So here we go. I'm going to launch this up, and right away it loads. I am working on, currently actually I'm working on error checking to make sure that a user can't type in something that will mess up the file, and that they can't possibly do something with the app that will cause corrupt data or anything like that. And that's what I'm working on now. I haven't totally got it all done, but there's a couple of error things here. But when you first load up in here, you can see you create new file or modify existing file, and these are buttons. And like I said, there's no XML on the document desktop. And modify existing file is something that's not implemented yet. And what this is, it allows you to open up an existing XML file, actually the conversation scripting file, and allows you to edit different things about that file. It allows you to select from a drop-down list all the questions that are already existing, selecting that question on a drop-down. It gives you all of the responses and all the data relating to that question, and you can on the fly change those values or add more responses or more questions from already existing. That's not implemented yet, but there is creating a new file from scratch from XML that will allow you to script a response question and then a response, and all from the user interface. So let's go ahead and create a new file, and it brings up a user interface. And I made it so it's just XML files. And just for a little tip, just in case you guys are interested, this save dialog doesn't actually save in XML. It's done in C++ after I press the save button. with the XML parts that I have in C++. And I'm going to name this anything I want, test. And if you don't have to put XML at the end because it'll automatically append it with XML. I'm going to put this right on the desktop. It doesn't exist. Want me to create it? Yeah. So when you get brought up, you're brought to a questions tab, and you have these little errors. They're telling you that these are required fields and what you need to do. So let's over, for instance, hover over this. Question number cannot be blank. Please enter an unused question number, not 0. For question cannot be blank. Please enter a question. ID cannot be blank. Please enter an unused ID, not 0. Question ID cannot be blank. Please enter your desired question ID, not 0. Response ID cannot be blank. Please enter your desired response ID, not 0. This is part of the error checking that I was talking about, and I got it to dynamically update as you're typing, or actually when you leave the field here. And you can see here we have a conversations file that you know what file you're working with. We're working with the test XML on this location. So if I bring this over, you now see that we have an actual XML file that we created. If you want to look into this, I can show you if you really want. But we can open this up, and you're going to see that I already automatically created the route that it needs for it to work with my system on my game. We have dynamic conversations and then dynamic questions and dynamic responses. That's what they did by creating that. Pushing that. Oh, forgot I had this. Another error question, another error checking feature. Question page is not complete. Please complete all required entries. A required entry is marked by a red circle with an exclamation mark in it. And if I push OK, it brings me back here and lets me know that, hey, these are the fields that are not put in. If I try to click next, it won't let me go to next because of the fact that I have errors on the page. So let me go ahead and for a question number, question number, remember, was question _1, question _2. So let's just put a question number of 1. And if I click here, you'll see the error goes away. For a question, let's just put how are you? And we'll just put that as a question that he can ask us. And if I click here, you can see the error goes away. And ID is just, again, used in my scripting to find a question, this data set here of all this info by an ID. So we'll just put this as 1. Usually it's going to be the same as your question number. There will be, I'm working on it currently, there will be auto completion, as in when you load up the program, it'll automatically input the question number based on what questions are already existing in the file. And we have response ID. So ID of 1. A question ID, you guys know what this is all about, how you have to match the, so if I ask a question, if he asks a question here, it's going to look for a response with the same response ID. And if I respond, it's going to look for this question that he can ask based for a matching question ID. So I'm going to click on 1, and then response ID of 1 as well. And variables is where you can select if you have any variables in your script. We talked about that last time in dynamic scripting. Is all you have to do is add an underscore. So we have how are you underscore. Underscore stands for a variable. And I can go ahead and go to variables. I have a drop down. And currently these are the 2 variables I have in my script. And we have player name, player last phrase. So if I put on player name, he'll ask, my name is Rich. So he'll ask, how are you, Rich? Or player last phrase, he'll ask, how are you? And then whatever I said last. So that's the way you can actually drop down and see your variables that you have. Just add an underscore. That's all you got to do. Add an underscore and put a variable here. You can select the variables. You can also order them because of the fact that the first underscore corresponds to the first variable, second underscore corresponds to the second variable, and you can just switch those up if you want by pushing the up or down key. Or if you decide, hey, you don't want it, you can just go ahead and delete them. We're not going to have any variables for this one right now. So, feeling. Obviously, we have these selection of feelings that you can have. We'll have happy. So he's going to ask this question if he's happy. And wait for a response, yes or no. Wait for a response means he's asking a question and he's going to wait for you to respond to it before he asks another question. You can check that yes or no. So if you're just making a statement like, I like you, then obviously wait for a response is no, because he's not waiting for a response. But if you're asking a question, you click on wait for a response. And we have all this here. When we look over here, conversations file, it's seen that. So let's go over this page one more time. We have question number, which is what number the question is. Question, the actual question you want. ID is the identification number of this question. Question ID is when the player says something, it looks for a response, a question that he can ask, if it's a matching question ID. And response ID is when he asks this question, it's gonna, when you say something, it's gonna check if it has the same response ID. Just go ahead and click next. It's gonna bring us to the player response player responses page, and this is where we can respond back to his question. And we're gonna add a response number of 1. Player response of, oh, by the way, we have these errors here. You can just hover over them, required. You won't be able to continue unless you fill out all the info that's required. Player responses, we're going to put not too bad. Not too bad is what we can say. So if the speech recognition software recognizes something that sounds similar to not too bad, it'll recognize this as an appropriate response. If you notice that you can't change this response ID because it was auto-filled by your previous step, because of the fact that he's asking a question and this is how you're going to respond. So in order for the user not to enter a wrong number here and cause it to have undefined behavior, it's gone ahead and put that in for you to make sure that this response is linked to this question. That's why it did that for you. ID is 1. Question ID. Now if I try to put 1 and go on to the next thing, it's going to pop up and say question ID cannot be the same as the question ID for the question. And it goes ahead and deletes it because it can't. Because what will happen is we have a question. How are you? See, how are you? And the question ID is 1. So if we respond not too bad and its question ID is 1, it's going to ask how are you? Then you're going to respond and it's going to ask how are you? Then you're going to respond and it's going to ask how are you? It's going to end up in a loop. So I don't want that to happen. So if you try to enter the same number as with the question ID on the question, it's going to say no way. And it's going to go ahead and give you this error, telling you it cannot be the same as the question ID for their question. So we're going to go ahead and put 2. Now feeling is how what you said is going to make him feel happy. So if you say not too bad, it's going to add a happy point to his system. So that's what's going to happen there. Now if I go ahead and click next, it's going to ask you please review the information shown to make sure it's correct. Conversations file. Let you know what file you're working with to make sure you're writing to the right file and you're modifying the right file. Question data, we have question number equals 1. And these, you can't modify these at all. They're not modifiable. Even though this is only a limited space here, when it gets too long for your question, it allows you to scroll to see your whole question. But even though I can select it, I can't modify. I'm hitting the keys right now. And nothing. ID is 1, question ID is 1, response ID is 1, feeling is happy. He means he's only going to ask this question if he's happy. He's going to wait for a response, and we have no variables in that question. Response data, we have response ID of 1, response is not too bad. ID of 1, question ID of 1, response ID of 1, and it's going to make him have a happy point by responding the way we did. Now if I go ahead and click, I just want to show you this XML file again, as you can see here. It went ahead and created that automatically. Now if I click finalize, watch what happens. Finalize. Okay, we're all done. So let's go ahead and open up this XML file again. And you're going to immediately notice that it's gone ahead and inputted all the data necessary in the right format and the right settings and everything. And now if I plug this into my game, it will immediately work. As in there will be no extra coding or nothing. This tool is specifically meant to work with my game, and so when whatever the app outputs, can be directly used in your game without any my game without any coding. So Now, you may notice that there is no response. Under the responses, there's no response because I haven't gotten to putting the response data in. I've only got the questions data in, not the response data. And I'm working on that. I haven't started on it yet, but I'm working on it. So we have dynamic conversations. And inside here, we have the dynamic questions. And here we have question 1. And question 1 has an ID of 1, a question ID of 1, a response ID of 1. It has no variables. Question is, how are you? He's feeling is happy, and wait for response is yes. Pretty neat. I believe so. Now I'm going to close this out, and I'm just going to go back to the questions, and I'm going to go ahead and make another question. Question 2, I'm going to ask him, I'm going to say, what is your name? What is your name? An ID of 2, a question ID of 2, and a response ID of 2. These are any numbers you want. And when you guys use this tool for the game when it comes out, it'll be all set. You will not possibly be able to make a mistake with this, because if you enter a number that's already existing, for a question number, you can't have question number. If you try to put question number 1, you're going to overwrite your old one, and it's going to overwrite the one you already had. So it's going to have error checking to make sure you don't enter one that already exists, and they'll give you a set of options of numbers you can choose from. So you won't be able to make a mistake with this app. Very proud of myself, actually, of this. I'm going to go ahead and make a couple variables just for a test. I'm going to add player name, player last phrase, player name, player name, player last phrase, player name, just to show you guys, okay, in this order. And he's going to ask this if he's feeling neutral, okay, and set a question mark here. It's a question. Wait for a response. Yes, he's going to wait for a response. Let's go ahead and click next. And player response number, it's going to be the second response. And we're going to just say Rich. You would not, if he asks you your name, it doesn't have to be predefined. You would put, technically you would put this in here. Any. Would allow you to say anything. But just for demonstration purposes, Rich, ID of 2. The question ID, if I have that 2 now, it's going to tell me I can't use it because it's the same as the question. So I'm going to enter 3. And the response ID is obviously filled in with the 2. So make sure it's linked with the question. And if you say it, and it's going to make them feel upset, let's just say. I'm going to go ahead and click next, and it's going to ask us to review our info to make sure it's correct. And we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 variables. And response ID of 2, question ID of 2, ID of 2, what is your name? Rich, question number of 2. I'm going to go ahead and click finalize. Finalize. There we go. We're all done. Let me just go over here, open up my text, and you're going to immediately notice it adds it appropriately. Again, we have dynamic conversations, dynamic questions, question underscore 1. Okay, question 1 has an ID of 1, question ID of 1, response ID of 1, no variables. Question is, how are you? Feeling is happy. Wait for response is yes. End of question 1. Question underscore 2 has an ID of 2, question ID of 2, response ID of 2. Yes, it has variables. In fact, it has variable underscore 1, player name, variable underscore 2, player last phrase, variable underscore 3, player name, variable underscore 4, player name, variable underscore 5, player last phrase, variable underscore 6, player name. End of the variables. And else has a question, what is your name? Feeling is neutral, and he's going to wait for a response. And the end of question 2. And then of dynamic questions. Again, we have no responses because I haven't done that yet. But I just wanted to show you this app, and like I said, I'm releasing this app right now when I upload this video. Get it from MediaFire, and play around with it. Make some conversation. Actually, The reason why I'm releasing this before the game is released is because I want you guys to come up with questions and then send the XML files you create to me so that I can add them in the game. Alright guys, I hope you appreciated that. I did work very, very hard on this. Very, very, very hard on this. It's still in heavy, heavy development, and there will be an actual editor to actually edit existing questions, like I said at the beginning of the tutorial. We can select from drop-down menus of pre-existing questions and view all the data, change all the data if you want, add new responses to it, new questions. So yeah, if you guys like it, just let me know. And if you think I did a good job, let me know as well. If you have any constructive criticism, let me know as well. But I think you guys are going to like this app extremely well. It's very, very user-friendly. You can't make a mistake with it. And I'm really happy with it. All right, guys. I'll let you guys go and talk to you some other time. All right. Bye.